The great hall of the Galactic Senate stretched wider than any building on Earth. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds of colored gas floated near the top, glowing softly with lights that had burned for thousands of years. Platforms floated at different heights, each one holding delegates from species that had traveled between stars when humans were still learning to make fire. Ambassador Daniel Porter stood on the lowest platform of all. This was the spot reserved for new species, for those who came to ask permission to join the great coalition that ruled this part of the galaxy. His platform was small and plain, made of simple gray metal, while the platforms above him sparkled with gold and crystal and materials that had no names in any human language. Daniel was 53 years old. He had gray at his temples and lines around his eyes from years of smiling. He wore a simple dark suit, not the fancy robes that most alien delegates preferred. Behind him stood his small team of 5 people, including his aide, Lieutenant Katie Ross, a young woman with sharp eyes who recorded everything she saw. 47 species watched from above. The Velnoxi were the oldest, beings made of living crystal that caught light and split it into rainbows. They had traveled through space for more than 100,000 years. The Korthani looked like giant insects with hard shells and too many legs, and they controlled the largest military fleet in known space. The Druvan had tentacles and soft bodies, and they ran almost all trade between the stars. Daniel cleared his throat and began to speak. "Honored members of the Galactic Senate," he said, his voice steady and calm. "I come before you as the representative of Earth and all humanity. We ask, with respect and hope, to join your coalition as equal partners." A soft murmur passed through the chamber. Daniel had expected this. Humanity had only discovered how to travel faster than light 15 years ago. They were babies. Compared to these ancient races, we know that we are young. Daniel continued. We know that our technology is simple compared to yours, but we believe that we have something valuable to offer. He pressed a button on his small device, and images appeared in the air around him. Pictures of Earth, blue and green and beautiful. Pictures of human cities, of farms, of children playing in parks. "We are a diverse people," Daniel said. "We have thousands of languages, thousands of cultures, thousands of ways of thinking. This diversity has made us creative and adaptable. We solve problems in ways that others might not expect." He showed them images of human art, music, and science. He showed them the great achievements of human history and was honest about the terrible failures too. "We do not claim to be perfect," Daniel said. "We have made many mistakes, but we learn from them. We grow, we change, and we believe that working together with other species will help us become better than we are." He took a deep breath and made his final offer. "We propose trade agreements that will benefit both our peoples. We offer scientific cooperation, sharing what we know, and learning what you can teach us. We suggest mutual defense pacts, so that we might stand together against any threat that faces us all." Daniel stepped back and folded his hands in front of him. "This is our petition. We ask only for a chance to prove ourselves worthy of your trust." Silence filled the chamber. Katie Ross watched the alien delegates carefully, trying to read their strange faces. She had studied their body language for months, but she still found them difficult to understand. Then the Korthani delegate made a sound. It started as a clicking noise, deep in its throat. Then the clicking grew louder, and the translator device in Katie's ear turned it into a word she did not expect. Laughter. The Korthani was laughing. Others joined in. The Druvan made wet, bubbling sounds that were also laughter. A species of tall, thin beings with too many eyes made a whistling noise that meant the same thing. Even the Velnoxi, who were famous for showing no emotion, flickered with colors that Katie's training told her meant amusement and scorn. The whole Senate was laughing at them. Daniel did not move. His face remained calm, showing nothing of what he felt inside. Katie wanted to shout at them, to demand respect, but she followed her ambassador's example and stayed silent. The laughter went on for a long time. Some delegates pointed at the humans. Others turned to their neighbors and made comments that the translators picked up as jokes about the primitive apes and the children who thought they could sit at the adults' table. Finally, the Velnoxy High Speaker raised one crystalline arm, and the chamber fell quiet. "Human ambassador," the High Speaker said, its voice like wind chimes in a storm. "Your species has existed for barely a cosmic heartbeat. You discovered fire while we were building empires across 1,000 worlds. You learned to fly while we were engineering stars." The High Speaker paused, and its body flickered with colors of dismissal. "You have nothing to offer us. Your technology is primitive. Your knowledge is incomplete. Your species is young and unproven. We cannot waste the Senate's time on matters of no importance." Daniel nodded slowly, as if the High Speaker had said something perfectly reasonable. "The Senate suggests that you return to your small corner of space and continue your development. Perhaps in 10,000 years, when you have achieved something worth noticing, you may petition us again." More laughter rippled through the chamber. Katie felt her hands shaking with anger. She looked at Daniel, waiting for him to argue, to fight back, to do something. But her ambassador simply gathered his materials and turned toward the exit. "We understand," Daniel said quietly. His voice was not angry, not sad, not anything at all. Just calm. "We will not trouble you again." He began to walk toward the door. "Ambassador Porter," the Korthani delegate called out, still making clicking sounds of amusement. "Do you not wish to beg? To plead for another chance? That is what young species usually do." Daniel stopped but did not turn around. "No," he said. "We asked once, with respect and honesty. You gave your answer. We accept it." He continued walking. His team followed in perfect silence. Katie Ross looked back once at the laughing faces, at the ancient beings who thought so little of her people, and she burned the image into her memory. The doors closed behind them. The human delegation walked through the great halls of the Senate building, past curious aliens who stared at them, past guards who barely noticed them. They walked all the way to their ship without speaking a single word. Only when the ship had left the station and jumped into faster-than-light travel did Katie finally speak. "Sir," she said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "What do we do now?" "What do we do now?" Daniel sat in his chair and stared at the stars streaming past the window. "We go home," he said, "and we get to work." "On what?" Daniel finally smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "On making sure that the next time we meet them, they will not laugh." 6 months passed after the humans left the Senate chamber. The galaxy moved on. Trade ships flew between stars. Diplomats argued over old disputes. The ancient species continued their ancient games of power and influence. And no one thought about the small blue planet called Earth. Commander Lisa Grant stood in the control room of Research Station 7, the last human facility in Coalition space. Through the windows, she could see the cold beauty of a distant nebula, colors of pink and purple swirling in the darkness. She had spent 3 years here, studying alien biology and learning everything she could about how life developed on other worlds. Now she was packing it all up. "Commander," said one of her scientists, a young man named Paul Carter, "the Korthani patrol is asking why we are loading our ships." Lisa did not look away from the window. "Tell them we are leaving. They want to know why. Tell them we have decided to go home. Nothing more." Paul hesitated. "Should we not explain? They might think we are hiding something." Lisa finally turned to face him. Her face was calm, showing no emotion at all. "We owe them no explanations," she said. "We came here as guests. We asked to be partners. They said no. So we are leaving. That is all anyone needs to know." She gave her final orders. Every piece of equipment that belonged to humans would be loaded onto the ships. Every experiment would be shut down properly. Every room would be cleaned until it was spotless. They would leave nothing behind that could be called a mess. "We will not give them any reason to complain about us," Lisa said. "When we leave, this station will be cleaner than the day we found it." Across Coalition space, other humans were doing the same thing. Merchant ships completed their final deliveries, honored every contract, and paid every debt. Then they flew away without saying goodbye. Research teams finished their projects, shared their findings with their alien partners, and then packed up and left. Diplomats closed their offices, returning all borrowed materials and leaving polite notes of thanks. No one complained, no one argued, no one asked for another chance. The humans simply disappeared. The Druvan Trade Collective was the first to notice something strange. A Druvan merchant named Brelix had built a good business relationship with human traders. They bought medicines from him and sold him interesting foods and drinks from Earth. The business was small, but profitable. One day, Brelix arrived at the trading post to find it empty. The humans had left everything in perfect order. The floors were clean. The accounts were settled. There was a short message waiting for him. "Thank you for your business. We will not be returning. We wish you well." That was all. No explanation. No anger. Just a polite goodbye. Brelix tried to contact the human trade office on Earth. His messages were not rejected. They were simply not answered. He tried again and again over the following weeks, but the silence continued. Other Druvan merchants reported the same thing. Human business partners were vanishing. Ships that used to travel regular routes stopped appearing. Refueling stations where humans used to stop became quiet. The Druvan brought this information to the Senate, but no one was interested. The Velnoxy High Speaker dismissed it with a flicker of bored colors. "The humans have returned to their corner of space, as we suggested," the High Speaker said. This is not a matter for the Senate's attention, but the silence continued to grow. On Earth, deep beneath a mountain range on a continent called North America, Admiral Kevin Moore addressed the newly formed Terran Defense Council. The room was full of the most important military and political leaders on the planet. They had come from every nation, united for the first time in human history by a common purpose. "We gave them a chance to know us as friends," Admiral Moore said. His voice was hard, like stone. "They chose to laugh at us. They chose to dismiss us. They chose to treat us like children who wandered into a room where they did not belong." He paused and looked at the faces around the table. "We will not beg for acceptance we do not need. We will not cry about unfair treatment. We will not waste our time trying to change their minds. Instead, we will do what humans have always done when faced with those who look down on us." He pressed a button, and a map appeared in the air above the table. It showed the galaxy, with Coalition space marked in blue. Beyond the blue was a vast region of unexplored darkness. "We will go where no one has bothered to go," Admiral Moore said. "We will build where no one has bothered to build. We will grow strong in silence, away from their eyes. And when the time comes, we will show them what we have become." The council voted. The decision was unanimous. Earth would cut all ties with the coalition. No more trade. No more communication. No more anything. Humanity would turn its back on the galaxy and walk into the darkness alone. The few humans still living in coalition space received coded messages telling them to stay where they were if they wished, but to expect nothing from home. Some chose to stay, curious about life among the stars. Most chose to leave. Dr. Amy Collins was one of the few who stayed. She was a scientist studying ancient alien languages at a university on a Velnoxy world. Her work was important to her, and she did not want to abandon it, but she noticed changes. Other humans stopped answering her messages. The news feeds from Earth went silent. Ships that used to bring mail and supplies from home stopped coming. She tried to ask other humans what was happening, but they seemed to know as little as she did. Earth had become a mystery even to its own people scattered among the stars. Meanwhile, the coalition continued as it always had. The Korthani complained about border disputes. The Druvan worried about trade profits. The Velnoxy meditated on ancient wisdom and looked down on everyone else. No one paid attention to the empty space where human ships used to fly. Deep space sensors pointed at the region of space that humans had claimed before their petition to the Senate. These sensors were powerful, able to detect energy signatures from halfway across the galaxy. They found nothing. No ships. No stations. No signals. Just empty darkness. Some coalition scientists were puzzled. A species could not simply vanish. The humans must have died out, or perhaps they were hiding somehow. But hiding from such powerful sensors was supposed to be impossible. The mystery was noted in a few scientific reports. Then forgotten. Humans were not important. They had never been important. The galaxy had bigger concerns, but in the darkness beyond Coalition space, lights were beginning to glow. Factories were being built in places no one had ever explored. Ships of new design were taking shape in secret shipyards. Scientists were working on problems that no one had ever solved before. Earth had not died. Earth had not given up. Earth was preparing. And when the time came, the galaxy would learn that silence could be louder than any words. 3 years had passed since the humans walked out of the Senate chamber. 3 years since they disappeared into the darkness beyond Coalition space. 3 years of silence, broken only by the growing sounds of war. The Korthani Empire had always been aggressive. Their insectoid bodies were built for fighting, and their culture valued strength above all else. For thousands of years, the Coalition had kept their hunger for expansion under control. But now, with the Senate distracted by other problems, the Korthani saw their chance. They attacked 4 Druvan colony worlds in a single night. Their warships came out of faster-than-light travel, already firing. The Druvan defense forces, built for protecting trade routes rather than fighting wars, crumbled within hours. By morning, 50 million Druvan citizens were living under Korthani rule. The Senate exploded with anger. Delegates shouted at each other across the Great Chamber. The Velnoxy High Speaker tried to restore order, but even its ancient authority was not enough to calm the fury. The Druvan demanded justice. The Korthani claimed they were simply taking back worlds that had always belonged to them. Other species took sides, some supporting the Druvan, some quietly pleased to see the wealthy traders brought low. The Coalition, which had maintained peace for 8,000 years, began to crack. Dr. Amy Collins watched the news from her small apartment on the Velnoxy homeworld. She had lived among the aliens for almost 4 years now. Continuing her research on ancient languages, she had friends here, or at least colleagues who treated her with some respect. But lately, she had started to feel very alone. Her communication device made a soft sound. A message had arrived. But when she checked, she found it was encrypted in a way she did not recognize. She almost deleted it, thinking it was a mistake, but something made her hesitate. After an hour of trying different methods, she finally decoded the message. It was from Earth, the first communication she had received from home in over 2 years. Stay safe. Do not return yet. Trust nothing. That was all. No name, no explanation, no hint of what was happening back home. Just a warning. Amy sat in darkness for a long time, thinking about what the message might mean. Earth had not forgotten her. Someone was still watching, still keeping track of the humans scattered across Coalition space. But why tell her to stay? And why tell her to trust nothing? She decided to follow the instructions. She went about her work as normal, said nothing to anyone about the message, and watched the galaxy burn around her. The Druvan intelligence service was desperate. Their economy was failing. Their military was losing. They needed help, and they were willing to look anywhere to find it. An agent named Quellen was given a strange assignment. He was told to find out what had happened to the humans. The humans? Quellen asked, confused. Why would we care about them? They were nothing. His superior, a senior Druvan official named Marix, leaned forward with tired eyes. They were the last species to leave Coalition space voluntarily, Marix said. They did not fight. They did not beg. They did not even complain. They simply left. No one has ever done that before. Marix Setter. 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 So perhaps they knew something we did not. Perhaps they saw what was coming and decided to get out before it was too late. Marix made a gesture of uncertainty. Or perhaps they found something out there in the unexplored regions. Something that made them confident enough to walk away from the most powerful alliance in the galaxy without looking back. Quellen spent months on his investigation. He tracked down the few humans still living in Coalition space and questioned them carefully. But none of them knew anything useful. They had been cut off from Earth just like everyone else. He searched shipping records, looking for patterns in where human ships had traveled before they disappeared. He found nothing. The humans had covered their tracks well. He pointed the most powerful sensors the Druvan owned at the region of space beyond Coalition borders. He found nothing. No energy signatures, no communication signals, no evidence that anyone was living there at all. Either the humans had died, or they had found a way to hide that the Coalition could not penetrate. Quellen wrote his report with growing unease. Something about this mystery did not feel right. A species did not simply vanish, and the way they had left, so calm and quiet, suggested planning rather than despair. Meanwhile, the war between the Korthani and the Druvan grew worse. Other species were drawn in. Old alliances crumbled. New enemies emerged. Christopher Bell was a human diplomat who had stayed behind when Earth went silent. He lived on a neutral world called Venos Prime, pretending to be a simple trade consultant with no connection to his homeworld. He watched the Coalition tear itself apart and wondered if this was what Earth had been waiting for. One night, he received the same encrypted message that Amy Collins had received. Stay safe. Do not return yet. Trust nothing. He followed the instructions, just as she had. He told no one about the message. He continued his quiet life, watching and waiting for he knew not what. Across Coalition space, other humans received the same message. They were few in number, scattered across dozens of worlds, living quiet lives far from the centers of power. But they all got the same warning, and they all obeyed. Someone on Earth was keeping track of every human in the galaxy. Someone was sending messages that could not be intercepted by Coalition sensors. Someone was planning something. The Velnoxy High Speaker addressed the Senate in the 4th year after humanity's departure. The chamber was half empty. Many delegates had stopped coming, too angry or too afraid to participate in the failing Coalition. We face a crisis, the High Speaker said, its crystalline body flickering with colors of concern. The unity that has protected us for thousands of years is breaking. If we do not find a way to stop this conflict, we will destroy ourselves. Some delegates listened. Most did not care. They were too busy fighting their own battles to worry about the Coalition as a whole. In the back of the chamber, a Druvan scientist named Trellex stood up. He was not a delegate, just an observer who had been given permission to attend. High Speaker, Trellex said, his voice barely audible in the great chamber. I have a question. The High Speaker seemed annoyed at the interruption, but gestured for him to continue. 3 years ago, we sent the humans away. We laughed at them. We told them they had nothing to offer. Trellex paused, his tentacles trembling. Has anyone tried to contact them since then? Has anyone thought to ask if they might help us now? The chamber fell silent. Delegates looked at each other with expressions of surprise and confusion. The humans? One Korthani delegate said, making clicking sounds of amusement. What could they possibly do? I do not know, Trellex admitted. But they left without anger. They left without threats. They said they would not trouble us again. And they kept their word. Perhaps that means they would listen if we asked nicely. The High Speaker flickered with colors of dismissal. The humans are gone, it said. Our sensors show nothing in their space. They have either died or hidden themselves beyond our reach. Either way, they cannot help us. Trellex sat down, defeated. But in the darkness beyond Coalition space, something stirred. Ships moved through regions of space that no sensor could see. Factories built weapons that no one had ever imagined. Scientists made discoveries that would change the shape of war forever. Earth was ready. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn what humanity had become. 7 years had passed since the Senate laughed at humanity. 7 years since Daniel Porter walked out of that great chamber without a word of protest. In that time, the Coalition had torn itself apart with war and greed and ancient hatred. But now, something far worse had arrived. The first warning came from a distant mining colony on the edge of known space. A panicked transmission, broken and full of static, spoke of ships unlike anything anyone had seen before. Living ships, made of flesh and bone and hunger. Ships that did not come to conquer or trade, but to feed. The Zealoth swarm had reached the Milky Way. They came from beyond the galactic rim, from the darkness between galaxies where no one had ever traveled. They were not a species in the normal sense. They were a hive mind, billions of creatures sharing a single vast intelligence. They did not build technology. They grew it. Their ships were living things, bred for war and hunger and nothing else. And they were hungry. The mining colony went silent within hours. A coalition patrol ship was sent to investigate. It never returned. Another ship was sent, and another. None of them came back. Then the swarm attacked in force. 12 core worlds fell in 6 weeks. The Korthani, who had been so proud of their military strength, lost 3 full battle fleets in a single engagement. Their ships were fast and powerful, but the swarm was overwhelming. For every ship the coalition destroyed, 10 more appeared. For every creature killed, 100 were born. The Druvan homeworld was evacuated just hours before the swarm arrived. Millions of refugees fled in whatever ships could carry them, watching through windows as their cities burned behind them. The Velnoxi called an emergency session of the Senate. Though barely half the delegates could attend, many were dead. Others were trapped on worlds that had already fallen. The great chamber that had once held representatives of 47 species now held barely 20. The high speaker broadcast a desperate plea across all frequencies, reaching out to any species that might offer help. The message went everywhere, even to the empty darkness where humanity had once lived. Nicole Price watched the broadcast from a secure bunker beneath the surface of Mars. She was 60 years old now, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much. Once, she had been a young diplomat serving under Ambassador Daniel Porter. Now, she was the Secretary of External Affairs for the Terran Republic. The bunker was full of other leaders. Admiral Benjamin Cole commanded the Terran Navy. Defense Minister Hannah West controlled all military forces. President George Martinez led the civilian government. They had all gathered to watch the coalition's cry for help. "They are dying," Hannah West said, her voice flat and cold. "The species that laughed at us are being eaten alive." "Yes," Nicole said. "They are. And what do you want us to do about it?" Nicole did not answer immediately. She looked at the faces around the table. These men and women who had spent 7 years building something new. They had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, all while hiding in the darkness beyond coalition space. Earth had changed in those 7 years. The old nations still existed. But they worked together now, under a single government. The petty conflicts that had divided humanity for thousands of years had been set aside, replaced by a common purpose. Every factory, every scientist, every resource had been focused on a single goal, making humanity strong enough that no one would ever laugh at them again. And they had succeeded. The Terran Navy was small compared to the great fleets of the coalition. But its ships were decades ahead of anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human scientists had solved problems that alien researchers had struggled with for millennia. Human engineers had built weapons that could tear through the strongest shields, engines that could outrun the fastest ships, stealth systems that could hide entire fleets from the most powerful sensors. Humanity was no longer weak. Humanity was no longer primitive. Humanity was, quite possibly, the most advanced species in the galaxy. And now the galaxy was begging for help. "They laughed at us," Admiral Cole said. "They called us primitives. Children. Apes barely down from the trees. They told us we had nothing to offer." "Yes," Nicole said again. "So why should we risk our ships, our people, our future, to save them?" Nicole stood and walked to the window. Outside, the Martian landscape stretched to the horizon, transformed by 7 years of human work. Cities gleamed beneath protective domes. Ships rose and fell from spaceports. A planet that had once been dead was now alive with human activity. "The swarm will not stop at coalition borders," she said quietly. "If the coalition falls, the swarm will keep expanding. Eventually, they will find us too." We cannot hide forever, so we fight them on our terms, Hannah West said. We wait until they come to us. Then we destroy them in our own space, where we know every asteroid, every advantage, and how many billions will die while we wait. Nicole turned to face them. How many worlds will be consumed? How many species will be wiped out completely? Our species that mocked us, Admiral Cole pointed out. Species that treated us like dirt beneath their feet. Yes. Species that were cruel and arrogant and wrong. Nicole's voice grew stronger. But does that mean they deserve extinction? Does that mean their children deserve to be eaten alive? The room was silent. President Martinez spoke for the first time. He was a quiet man, better at listening than talking. But when he spoke, people listened. What do you suggest we do? Nicole? She took a deep breath. I suggest we save them. Why? Because we can. Because they need help, and we are able to give it. Because the humans who walked out of that Senate chamber 7 years ago did not do so out of weakness or fear. We left because we were too proud to beg, too dignified to argue, too confident in ourselves to need their approval. She looked at each face around the table. We will not save them because they deserve it. Many of them do not. We will not save them because they asked nicely. They did not. We will save them because we choose to be the kind of species that helps those in need, even those who once hurt us. That is what makes us human. That is what makes us worthy of the power we have built. The debate lasted for 6 hours. Voices were raised. Old wounds were reopened. Some argued that humanity owed the galaxy nothing. Others said that letting billions die when they could prevent it would make them no better than the swarm itself. In the end, they voted. The decision was unanimous. Admiral Cole began issuing orders immediately. The First Fleet would lead the assault. 400 ships, the best humanity had ever built, would jump into coalition space and engage the swarm directly. Their mission was simple: save as many lives as possible. Nicole sent one final message to all the humans still living in coalition space. The message was short. We are coming. Stay safe. This will be over soon. Dr. Amy Collins received the message in her small apartment on the Velnoxy homeworld. She read it 3 times, her hands shaking. Then she looked out her window at the sky, where distant flashes of light marked the approach of the swarm's advance forces. For the first time in 7 years, she smiled. Across the galaxy, other humans received the same message. Christopher Bell, on Venos Prime. Scientists on distant research stations. Merchants on trading worlds. All of them read those words and felt something they had almost forgotten. Hope. The swarm was coming. The coalition was falling. The galaxy was dying. But humanity was on its way. And the universe was about to learn what happens when you underestimate the quiet species from the small blue world. The Velnoxy homeworld was dying. The oldest species in the known galaxy, the race that had traveled between stars for more than 100,000 years, huddled in underground shelters while the swarm darkened their skies. Above them, 600 living ships circled like vultures, waiting for the final harvest to begin. The swarm had learned to enjoy this moment. The fear of trapped prey made the feeding sweeter. They let their victims watch the sky and understand that no help was coming, that the universe had forgotten them, that they would die alone. In the darkness, the Velnoxy High Speaker sat in the deepest chamber of the oldest bunker on the planet. Around it gathered the last survivors of the Senate, delegates from a dozen broken species. They had nowhere left to run. The coalition fleet was destroyed. Every ally had fallen or fled. This was the end. The High Speaker's crystalline body flickered with colors of despair and regret. It remembered the day the humans had come to petition the Senate. It remembered the laughter that had filled the chamber. It remembered Daniel Porter's calm face as he turned and walked away. We should have listened, the High Speaker whispered. We should have seen what they were. No one answered. There was nothing left to say. Then the sky tore open. It was not a gentle arrival. It was not a quiet emergence from faster-than-light travel. It was a rip in the fabric of space itself. A wound in reality that bled light and thunder. Through that wound came ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Terran First Fleet had arrived. 400 vessels emerged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with a dark metal that seemed to swallow light. They were smaller than the great warships of the Coalition, sleeker and more elegant, but there was something in their design that spoke of purpose and power. These were not ships built for show. These were ships built for war. Admiral Matthew Lane stood on the bridge of the carrier Independence. He was 45 years old, with a soldier's bearing and eyes that had trained for this moment for 7 years. Around him, his crew worked in focused silence, every person knowing exactly what they needed to do. "All ships," Matthew said, his voice calm and steady over the fleet-wide channel. "Weapons free. Protect the civilian populations first. We did not come here to watch people die." The swarm reacted with confusion. Their hive mind had never encountered these ships before. Their sensors could not understand the strange metals, the alien energy signatures, the impossible precision of the formation. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the swarm hesitated. That hesitation cost them. The human ships opened fire. Coalition weapons relied on shields and long-range energy attacks. They fought at distance, wearing down enemies over hours or days of careful combat. But human weapons were different. Human weapons were designed for one thing: getting close and hitting hard. Kinetic cannons launched projectiles at incredible speeds, punching through the organic hulls of swarm ships like needles through paper. Missiles exploded with exotic warheads that burned the living tissue of enemy vessels. Fighter squadrons poured from carrier bays, piloted by humans whose reflexes and creativity the swarm's hive mind could not predict. The first swarm ship died in 30 seconds. A second followed, then a third. The hive mind tried to coordinate a response, but human electronic warfare systems scrambled their communications. Individual swarm vessels found themselves alone, cut off from the greater intelligence, confused and afraid. Fear was not something the swarm had ever felt before. On the surface of the Velnoxy homeworld, drop pods screamed down from orbit. Human Marines in powered armor hit the ground running, their weapons already firing at the swarm creatures that had been preparing to harvest the population. Sergeant Kyle Duncan led his squad through the ruins of the capital city. His armor's sensors painted the world in shades of red and blue, showing enemy and ally, threat and opportunity. Behind a collapsed building, his sensors detected life signs. "Civilians," reported Private Rachel Morgan, moving to his side. "About 200. Velnoxy. They have wounded." Kyle did not hesitate. "We protect them." Morgan, "Set up a perimeter. I want overlapping fields of fire." "Nothing gets through, sir," Morgan said. "They are the ones who laughed at us, who called us primitives." Kyle looked at her through his helmet. "I know who they are. Do you know who we are? We're the ones who came back anyway. Now move." The squad formed a protective circle around the terrified Velnoxy civilians. When the swarm ground forces attacked, they met a wall of human firepower that they could not break. Kyle and his Marines fought for 6 hours straight, never giving ground, never letting a single creature reach the people they were protecting. In orbit, the battle raged with terrible beauty. Human ships danced through the swarm fleet, striking and retreating, pulling the living vessels into traps and ambushes. The Independence launched wave after wave of fighters, each piloting with a reckless courage that the swarm could not understand. Admiral Lane watched his tactical display, calculating, predicting, directing his ships with the precision of a surgeon. He had studied war his entire life. He had trained for this moment since the day Daniel Porter came home from the Senate and told them what had happened. Every simulation, every exercise, every sleepless night of planning had led to this, and humanity was winning. After 3 days of continuous fighting, the last swarm ship retreated. It fled toward the galactic rim, carrying the memory of its defeat back to whatever darkness had spawned it. The human fleet let it go. They wanted the swarm to remember. They wanted the hive mind to know that this galaxy was no longer easy prey. The silence that followed was deeper than any the Velnoxy had ever known. Then, slowly, the crystalline beings emerged from their shelters. They looked up at the sky, at the human ships still orbiting their world, at the strange and beautiful vessels that had saved them from extinction. 1 week later, Ambassador Daniel Porter returned to the Galactic Senate. He was older now, gray at his temples and lines deeper around his eyes. But his back was straight, and his voice was just as calm as it had been 8 years ago when he first stood on that lowest platform. This time, the platform was not the lowest. The Velnoxi had insisted that he stand at their own level among the eldest races of the galaxy. The chamber was full again. Survivors from a dozen species had gathered to see the humans who had saved them. There was no laughter this time. There was only silence, heavy with shame, and gratitude, and wonder. Daniel looked around at the faces watching him. He saw the Velnoxi High Speaker, its crystalline body flickering with colors he had learned to read as respect. He saw Druvan delegates, their tentacles still trembling from weeks of fear. He saw even a few Korthani, their clicking voices silent for once. "We did not come back for apologies," Daniel said. His voice was soft, but it carried through the entire chamber. "We did not come back to gloat or demand payment. We came back because the galaxy needed help, and we were able to give it." He paused, letting the words sink in. 8 years ago, I stood in this chamber and asked to be your partners. You laughed at me. You told me that humanity had nothing to offer. You sent me away like a child who had wandered into a room where he did not belong. The shame in the chamber was almost visible, a weight pressing down on every delegate. "You were wrong," Daniel said simply. "But that does not matter now. What matters is what we do next." He took a breath. "Humanity will return to our space now. We have much work to do, rebuilding what was lost and preparing for the future. If you wish to know us, to trade with us, to stand beside us as equals, you know where to find us. We will welcome you." He turned to leave, then paused at the edge of the platform. "But this time," he said quietly, "perhaps you will listen before you laugh." He walked out of the chamber, just as he had 8 years ago. But this time, the silence behind him was not the silence of dismissal. It was the silence of respect. 10 years after the Battle of Velnoxi, as historians came to call it, the Galactic Coalition formally dissolved. In its place rose the United Galactic Assembly, built on principles of equality and mutual respect. Humanity was a founding member. When asked why they had helped the species who had mocked them, Admiral Matthew Lane simply smiled. "You told us we had nothing to offer," he said. "So we went away and found something worth offering. We just needed time to work in peace. And when the time came, we chose to use that power to help, rather than to take revenge." He looked out at the stars, at the galaxy that humanity had saved. "That is what makes us human. We remember our wounds, but we do not let them make us cruel. We rise above our pain and become something better." The galaxy learned an important lesson about the quiet species from the small blue world. Humans did not need to shout to be heard. Sometimes, the loudest message was the one delivered in perfect silence. And sometimes, the greatest strength was choosing mercy when you finally had the power to destroy.